Hey everybody, welcome to EduMatch. So follow along with us using the hashtag EduMatch and also at podcasts.edumatch.org/tweet talk, which you're obviously doing if you can see us right now. So we're going to go ahead and begin. We have an awesome episode for you tonight. So I'm very, very pleased to be chatting with Lizzett Gutierrez. Lizzett, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Oh, it is a pleasure and it is an honor. So, I'm going to tell the folks watching a little bit about you. So, Lizette's an English as a second language teacher from New Jersey. She's also the author of Cultural Chameleon of Ed, which is a blog that helps bring awareness about the ELL student population and culturally responsive teaching. She's passionate about empowering educators to work towards establishing a sense of cultural competence to integrate into their teaching practices. So, you can find her on Twitter at Lizzett Gutierrez 1. So welcome, Lizzett. So glad to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be on.
All right, wonderful. So we're going to dive right in. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about you just so that people can know you, because we've been really getting to know you in the EduMatch Voxer group and on some tweet and talks. But what's your background and who or what inspired you to go into education?
Well, as Sarah mentioned, my name is Lizzett Gutierrez. I am an ESL teacher in New Jersey. I'm premature to the field of education. I've only been teaching for about 3 years, so this is my third year of teaching. I've taught in two of the largest urban districts in New Jersey, being Newark and Elizabeth. I've worked with students from a variety of linguistic and cultural origins. So some of the countries that my students come from are from Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba, El Salvador, Puerto Rico, Conakry, Guinea, and the works. It keeps going. So I love the fact that I'm able to speak with you today about ELLs and understanding culturally responsive teaching and how that should be important in the classroom.
Well, that is awesome. Your students are from everywhere. So, I mean, that is so cool. And that really requires a high degree of cultural competency and cultural
For
relevance.
sure.
So, yeah. So, what fuels your passion to advocate for ELL students?
Well, honestly, before I got into education, I worked with students in camp or after school care programs, both in New Jersey and in New York. I honestly, just like most high school students, had a lot of fleeting interests. So I once wanted to be in business, and then I was like, oh, but I'm good with kids. So I said, let me just try working with kids. So as an educator, I believe in the biblical principle that many are called, but few are chosen. So I felt called to really be a part of education, to be a role model for my students who have struggled with peer pressure, who have struggled with self-esteem, because I've grown up in a very flawed family dynamic. And, you know, a lot of our students go through things like that, despite of what cultural background they may be from. And I just like to be able to serve as a role model for those students by paying it forward every single day in the classroom.
Wow, and that is powerful. That is definitely powerful, and we can draw upon our experiences that we've had growing up to help, to help serve our students. So, absolutely. All right, so we're going to jump right into the topic of culture right here. So, there seems to be a lot of different definitions out there what culture actually means. So, just to kind of calibrate and make sure that everyone tuned in is on the same page. So, what's your definition of culture?
Now, for me, culture equals tolerance. In my perspective, culture frames how you identify yourself and shouldn't be prescribed by society. I love the definition offered by teachingtolerance.org. Tolerance is the act of recognizing other beliefs and practices without sharing in that particular item. It's a deference and an acceptance or appreciation for diversity of the many diverse cultures in our world, which can include different forms of expression and simply ways of being human. We all look at life differently, and we perceive it differently. So I think that that is important, and that's at the crux of really understanding culture overall.
Absolutely. So that's a great definition. So I'm gonna go ahead and tweet that out on our hashtag EduMatch. Yeah, that is definitely powerful, and I love how you were saying about the different lenses that people can have, but still, kind of recognizing that everyone else's culture is also valuable and a part of them. So absolutely, I love that. All right. So your blog is called Cultural Chameleon. So you describe yourself as a cultural chameleon. So what exactly is a cultural chameleon? And let's start with that. What's a cultural chameleon?
All right, so let's take the word apart. Cultural chameleon. So chameleon, when you think of a chameleon, they're constantly having to shift and adapt to their environment. I do that with my students as I interact with them every single day. I have to constantly shift and adapt to a variety of worldviews that they carry. You know, they may come from different countries and speak different languages. However, as I mentioned before, they carry a different perspective. They have different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. I believe the implications of having those ELLs in our classrooms is that they themselves are cultural chameleons. They're having to come from their native country to adapt to American culture, adapt to a language, adapt maybe to the educational systems that may differ. And that's a lot of pressure on them all at once. So if we understand that that's the mindset as to what may contribute to their cultural shock, we would be able to understand ourselves what it means to be cultural chameleons, because we're constantly having to adapt as educators. One size does not fit all. I think that that is important to understand. Moreover, you know, it helps inform me and how I utilize things in the classroom. You know, if a student is able to have windows and mirrors, I believe they will have windows to look out into other cultures that are similar or that are different than their own, learn from them, but they also have to have mirrors where they're able to see themselves reflected. Can you imagine being in a culture where they never see themselves represented in any of our curriculum or any discussion we have in our classrooms, what that message may send? Which may cause them to suppress or may think that they maybe cause them to think that they're not accepted when they actually should be. They're an important proponent to our classrooms.
Wow,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm digging that. So, you know, it's at ISTE this past year, the closing keynote was talking about the importance of girls in STEM. So I mean, like it was a different topic, but she did say something similar about people, you know, it's harder to be something you can't see. So I love your windows and your mirrors. Like that is just so on point. Yeah, and Susie
Absolutely.
is saying it's so nice to see you live, and
Hi, Susie.
Rochelle and Takir also tuned in, and there's a few folks on the Twitter hashtag as well. So
Hi,
awesome! Hello to
everybody.
everyone. All right. So why is it you talk a lot about culturally responsive pedagogy and the
Right.
importance of being culturally responsive. So tell us, why is it important for educators to be well versed in cultural responsiveness?
I believe it's important because it's at the center of learning. It plays a big part in how we communicate and process information. It also helps us as educators to be grounded in what shapes the varying perspectives of groups and individuals like the ELLs. Culturally responsive teaching recognizes, it responds, and revels in having equity and equality for students who are trying to attain an education and come from diverse cultures. Ladson Billings, she said, culturally responsive teaching is a pedagogy that recognizes the importance of including students' central references in all aspects of learning. So it goes back to the idea of having windows and mirrors. So if their culture is what centers and shapes their reality, we need to be able to make our curriculum and content relevant for them, and also embracing of their realities.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely having that literature that reflects various cultures and celebrating cultures throughout the year, like
Absolutely.
not just a specific month or week or
Right.
yeah, yeah. I definitely
True.
feel you on that. Okay, wonderful. Um, so in your chapter, and we're going to talk about the EduMatch book in just a little bit, but you do reference the iceberg model of culture, and I believe you also made reference to it in a blog post. So, what exactly is that, and how does it translate into our educational practices?
All right, so I'm going to show you a quick screen share of the iceberg model of culture because it is an important tool to be able to reference when we are dealing with ELLs. So here we have what's called an iceberg model of culture. Um, it's a little bit of an analogy. It pretty much talks about how culture can only be viewed on as an iceberg. So the majority of culture that we see on the surface. So at the surface level, we can see the foods that people eat, the way that they may dress, the music they may listen to, maybe visual arts, drama. These are things that we can see above sea level on the surface. You know, it's once said that we can't judge a book by its cover, and it's actually true, because we can only see things on the surface that's only manifested on the outside of an individual. However, there are things in the deeper culture that really ultimately frame a student's or any particular person's values and the way that they identify themselves. So for example, eye contact. You know, for us in America, it's seen as, you know, if you don't look at someone in the eye, you either can't trust them or you believe they're up to something. And in cultures like Chinese culture, eye contact is actually not seen as something, as an outward behavior. If you look at someone, let's say that they're having a heated discussion with you, you're not to look at that person. Because if you do look at that person, then in some ways it's very similar to what we may think, but they just do not do that in their culture. You also have the concept of personal space, right? Some of us, if not all of us, we like to have that personal space. We don't want people to come in close proximity to us, but in some cultures that's seen as something valued. It shows a connectedness, a closeness. So there's those types of things. But then you can also think of concepts of leadership. In certain cultures, leadership is male dominated and females are not seen as leaders. The idea of touching, right? These are just some things that really we don't ultimately see when it comes to dealing with ELLs. I'll give you a perfect example just to come back to the discussion that we are having. I had a student last school year. He's in second grade, came from Nigeria, is a Port of Entry student. And his teacher was a first-year teacher as well. And there was times where she was trying to rectify his bad behavior, and as a second grader, he was laughing. And so to her, she thought, oh, why is this student laughing at me? Is he trying to disrespect what I'm saying, or does he not see that I'm actually upset with his behavior? And I said to her, you know, one, developmentally, he's in second grade and may not understand the severity of his actions. And two, maybe he's laughing to alleviate the really intense situation that he's having to encounter with getting in trouble. You know, maybe that is culturally how he alleviates the pressure or kind of brings the stress level down to de-escalate what's going on. And it was interesting how the teacher looked at me and she was like, yeah, you know, we have to be careful of how we prescribe some of these things that we see in ELLs, because what we may think could be completely the opposite of what their perspective is on what may be happening in the classroom. And it was unusual because the next day, the student came back and kneeled, as in bowing before her, you know, as a way of saying, I'm sorry, and as a way of showing respect for what he had done. So, you know, we have to be aware of the iceberg, the layers of things that are within someone's culture, and how behaviors and ways of thinking and being really are interconnected. We don't see everything. To be able to understand wholeheartedly what exactly is that particular student's culture and how behaviors are acceptable or may not be acceptable, you know. So I think the iceberg is a great analogy to understand that there are surface level things we can see in ELLs that come out that we can see, and there's things that are deeply embedded within those students that really frame who they are and how they carry themselves in their new environment.
Wow. So that is deep. Like I love that example that you shared about the student. And yeah, just like everything you were saying, like neurons were firing off in my brain because there's just so much there. Like I'd seen that model in one of my classes before, and it was
Right.
about how cultures were usually or viewed in school through like celebrations, food, and stuff like
True,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, and you didn't really go below the surface in many cases. So I think that that's just amazing to be able to kind of visualize and think about all the different elements that you know common to any culture, really.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's not just for ELLs. When you think about it, it's just in our day-to-day interaction with people. We live in a melting pot in today's day and age, and you know, we don't see these things, and we're quick to judge, quick to prescribe, saying, "Oh, well, this person must be disrespectful. Or all people in this people group are disrespectful," and that's not necessarily true. You know, you got to be a little bit more less on the idea of prescribing things you don't necessarily fully understand.
Right. That is so, so true. That is so true. Okay, so going to your blog again, like your blog is amazing, by the way. Uh, so
Thanks.
yeah, no, it's wonderful. So I really enjoy your post. You wrote one that really stuck out to me called "Living in the Hyphen" a few months ago. So, what exactly does it mean to live in the hyphen? And after you explain that, then I'll have a follow-up question for you.
Sure. Living in the hyphen, it came up really randomly for me. You know, when you look at me, you see that I have African American features that you can see on the surface of who I am. But I am, if someone was to ask me, you know, what exactly is your nationality? Like most people say, where are you from? Right? I would say I am an Afro-Latina because I embrace my racial uh, makeup of who I am. And in my ethnicity, I am a Latina. So my family is from Cuba. I've never been to Cuba a day in my life, but I would like to at some point be able to visit there. And I embrace that Cuban culture because it's who I am and it shapes how I view the world. I was born here, so that's why I say Cuban American. But again, those types of things are living in the hyphen, that hyphen of Cuban American or Afro Latina, that hyphen really shows how I may, you know, project my identity in different environments with different people. It's very unusual because we talk about racism being something that happens from people that are different from us in terms of our race or languages that we speak, but it really happens even with people that are within the actual nationality, like Cubans, Hispanics. It happens within that community. And so living in the hyphen really just talks about the idea of having two identities, two hybrid identities that carry themselves and kind of interchangeably switch, if you will, depending upon where I am and who I'm speaking to. And I like the fact because I look African American, and if someone's speaking Spanish, I could just blurt out something in Spanish, and they're like, "Whoa, you speak Spanish?" "Yeah, I do." And then I ask them, I don't cease to ask them, like, "What did you think?" You know, and it was funny because some people are like, "Wait a minute," because I try to contest, like, "What did you think I was?" You know, so it's just good to be able to understand that I have two hybrid identities that I could switch between as I see fit, and embrace them both in a world that would obviously try to separate them or try to subscribe them or try to rationalize them. And race is something that's completely fluid and it's relative from person to person. So our students can do the same exact thing. You know, they can be from another culture, maybe adapt to this one, but who's to say? They don't have to suppress what they've always known. You know what I mean? They can also embrace the American culture of being here. I always tell my ELL students, you learn another language, but it doesn't mean that the other language or your identity, your culture, whatever embodies who you are, should be something you put to the back burner. This is just an enhancement to help you look more versatile and to be more versatile in a world that will constantly try to say, wait, just because you don't have a green card, it doesn't say you were born here, you know, am I considered less than? I mean, that's just the idea that, you know, that I came from with that living in the hyphen. We constantly live in the hyphen. I'm Cuban American, Afro Latina. What I determine that. No one else does that.
Right. That is powerful. And I have to say that post really resonated with me because I'm also living in the hyphen Haitian American here. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you just discussed being Afro Latina. So
Right.
so if you could just speak a little bit about the difference between the terms Latino, Latina, Latinx, Hispanic or Spanish. Like a lot of people use those interchangeably, but they're really not. So if you could just please speak a little bit about what each one means to you.
Sure, I'm going to screen share again, and I'm going to show you a couple of things that address that question. So the differences between Latino, Latinx, Hispanic, and Spanish. Now, a lot of us are comfortable with, sorry, play it from here. A lot of us are comfortable already with the terms Latina and Latino. It means a person of Latin American origin. Now, this does not include people from Brazil, but it excludes people from Spain, believe it or not. So not all Brazilians identify themselves as Latino, but many of them do. Now, jumping down to the bottom where it says Latinx, this is something that has been recently coined and created as a term to signify the gender neutral alternative to Latino or Latina, because the term Latino seems like it's excluding the femininity within the population. And so it's referring to someone of Latin American descent. Hispanic is someone who descends from a Spanish speaking country. So oftentimes you'll see people say, oh, you're Spanish. No, I'm not, because I'm not originally from Spain. I speak Spanish, right? But am of a Latin American origin because my family, right, in their ancestry come from Cuba. So this is often, Hispanic and Latino are often used in the census to kind of like group a large minority, when in fact, we don't want to be grouped. You know what I mean? In Bolivia, for example, let me get off of my screen share for a second. In Bolivia, which is in Central America, we have 39 official languages that are spoken. And it's not just Spanish. You have indigenous languages that are spoken, right? You have things like Quechua, which are from the indigenous Aztec and things of that nature. And then if I go back just real quick, because I want to show you another thing real quick about this, because I think it's important to understand, is here we have, let me go back. Think of it this way. Latino is, you're thinking geographically, okay? You're thinking geographically in the center, as you can see, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil. These are the places where people geographically come from. And they do speak Spanish in some way, shape, or form, or a derivative in those particular countries. Then if you think Hispanic, you want to think it includes people from Spain, but not from Brazil. So you're thinking language, okay? So these are the differences. I know for some people, this could like turn things upside down, because it's like, wait a minute, I thought it was the same. No, it's not. I think understanding this mechanism will help you to understand how identity and culture and how people within that particular culture identify themselves, just as Latinos, for example. So, yeah, I mean, this is important to understand, as crazy as it may sound, that people within a group identify themselves differently and don't want to be all grouped as the same. So Africans, same thing. You have Africans that are from North Africa, right? Maybe white, light skin, right? And then you have people from West Africa who may, are of darker skin, and they speak different languages. So for example, I have students who are African, Conakry, Guinea, they speak French. People from the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, they speak French. So everyone does not speak the same languages, because even in Africa, it depends on what village or tribe you're a part of that you identify, and that's the language you speak within that particular racial group.
Yes, that is so true. And I'm glad that you brought up the point about many different languages are spoken oftentimes in the country. And a lot of times that gets overlooked. Like you get the when students come here, then you have like major languages that a lot of
Right.
times are, you get resources for, but not the languages spoken in various communities and tribes and states.
That's so true that you said that, Sarah, because I had a student who he was from Ghana, and they speak Twi in Ghana, and I finding resources and dictionaries and things of that nature sometimes is very hard. And then I'm like, oh, well, how am I going to accommodate the student? I still need to accommodate the student regardless. What do? We get maybe someone that's within the district that may speak that language. What do? We may reach out to the state, right, to help us out with dispensing a translator. Because just because we don't have those resources, do we just say, hey, okay, we don't have anything for that person in that language, and that's just pretty much it, So we still, by law, civil rights. There's a civil rights law about that, where we still have to accommodate any particular student from any particular language, regardless of if it's something that's generally spoken or not. It has to still be put in place. And it's good to find out in your district what is put in place for students that they speak specific languages and they don't, we don't have the resources. What are we supposed to do as a district to be able to get that happening? Because even with testing, I can't let that fly. I can't say, oh, well, we don't have the test in Tweet. Oh, well, you still have to provide a word-to-word dictionary. You know what I mean? So these are just some nuggets to understand that I've had that experience before, and I've had to buy things from certain people to be able to make that happen, as hard as it may be.
Yes, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because a conversation emerged in a Voxer group I was in a couple weeks ago, where there was an administrator that was looking for ways to deal with this situation. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Absolutely. Okay. So shifting gears just a little bit. So I know you and I have had like multiple sidebox conversations about culture and things of that nature. So one of the ones that we were talking about was about the role of media, the role that the media plays when it comes to shaping the narrative surrounding our students of color. Excuse me. So Chimamanda Adichie had a TED talk that we talked about, the danger of a single story. So how can we as educators and as students and parents and stakeholders, all stakeholders coming together to fight this dangerous single story narrative that's often put out about our students of color?
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned in that particular video, she talks about the danger of a single story. So every single day we are bombarded with a variety of images in the media that portray a specific quote unquote Hispanic or a quote unquote African American, like shows like Blackish, for example. I don't know if any of you have seen the show Blackish, but you see a lot of Black innuendos, certain character sketches that happen. And I just believe that when people watch, sometimes we don't watch critically, so we got to be like, we have to think about it. Like, wait a minute, are all Black people always going to fly off the handle? No. Okay. You want to be careful with that type of stuff, because then you prescribe it to every Black person you meet. So if you say something wrong to them, you're like, wait a minute, she's going to fly off the handle on me. No, she's not. Not all Black people are the same. Not all Hispanic people are maids or nannies, as we sometimes see. We have to be those archetypal characters that are often created by producers. Hopefully it's by people that are within that racial group. Sometimes it's not. But we have to be able to be critical and see, like, for ourselves, like, is this how it is in reality? We got to separate TV from reality. That's number one. And then number two, in our history books, we read in our history books that Christopher Columbus came to, find America. Okay, but still, you want to be able to be a critical reader and a critical consumer on a day-to-day basis on whatever it is, because what happens is it happens subconsciously. You instantly say, okay, this is how everyone is. No, it's not. We want to be able to be mindful of that, because sometimes, and if not oftentimes, it could be like, oh, all Black people are like this. We see people protesting nowadays. Immediately you're saying, oh, all Black people want to start problems. No. You know what I mean? I think it's important to understand those things. The things that we see in the media, especially with news being how it is, they're kind of like the undiscoverable fourth branch of government, because they have influence in a lot of things. But you want to be careful with that and be critical in what it is that you consume every single day as a teacher. Also, you want to understand that sometimes with subscribing to those things, it breeds misunderstanding. You have to be mindful of the influences that actually play into you understanding and the interaction of people that are different than you. You could practice tolerance, but not accept somebody's culture. There's a difference. And you could accept someone without understanding him or her. So I think that it's important to know that in order to begin practicing tolerance, to begin to unify ourselves with one another, especially with ELLs, without losing sight of that, we have to give people a chance to tell their own story before you tell the story for them. It's really simple. I believe a lot of the things that are going on in this world don't have to be overcomplicated if we just communicate and we speak without assumption and biases, because biases come from our childhood, even that too, so that's just practical advice that I would give when interacting with your colleagues in the educational field, or interacting in your day-to-day life, or even interacting with ELLs in general.
Yeah, and that's solid. That is solid. Like I love the point that you made about people sharing their own story. I think that is powerful without making assumptions. Because you know what they say about assumptions. I'm not going to say it.
Assumptions kill us.
Yeah.
They do.
Well, yeah, literally.
They really do. They breed a lot of ignorance and a lot of animosity that really doesn't need to be there. I'm not an expert in the stretch of the imagination, but I do know that with every single day, if we listen more as much than we react to things, I think we would be in a better place in this world.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So kind of a related question. So, I remember that we talked and we said that when people are kind of living in a bubble and they don't get to know people other than their own demographic group, then their only knowledge of other groups might be through media.
Right.
Yeah. So, but sometimes people might not even realize that they have these biases. So what steps can people take to kind of recognize their own bias and to overcome it?
So as I mentioned before, you want to step out of your bubble. Step out of your bubble. That's number one. Stepping out of your bubble is very simple. Start having conversations with people that are different than you, about any particular thing that you may want to discuss. I think that talking really is the avenue towards understanding. Abandon some of the assumptions that you may have only referenced in media. Abandon some of those things. Be a critical consumer, as I said. You're only, I believe a lot of the things that happen in this world, you want to be able to ask questions, leave assumptions, ask questions. I think it's important. And I think if you are able to step into the reality of other people, I think it'll make you a more versatile, well-rounded person. The stuff that people actually go through, and how that shapes how they may view the world, as flawed as it may be. I mean, it's just, I believe talking, we get places. I know that it's not something that could be done overnight, but I think that with one day, one student at a time, we can ultimately change. Mahatma Gandhi once said that we should be the change that we want to see. If we're not a part of the problem, then we are not a part of the solution. We want to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. So I think that may be general statements, but I think it could in some ways resonate for each person on what practical ways they can actually apply this in their workplace as they educate students that are ELLs or in general.
Yeah, totally. And yeah. So I think that's a great step to definitely have those conversations and to release any prejudgment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you have submitted a fantastic chapter for the upcoming EduMatch Snapshot in Education 17, aka hashtag EduSnap17. Hashtag. So yes. So what can people expect to read in your chapter?
I believe in my chapter, you'll learn a little bit more about how to apply the iceberg model of culture in your educational sphere of influence and in the classroom to get those conversations started on how we can better serve ELLs. I believe it'll also strike up a conversation about why it's important to be mindful of the things that we consume on a daily basis, as I just mentioned before, in the media or things that we read, so that we are not in danger of telling a single story. I do believe that it will open up eyes to discuss the importance of tolerance and acceptance. And I think it will often challenge our perception of what culture is, how language and culture have a relationship with one another, and what perspectives or things that we may not see on the surface of what we see in our students that really impact their worldview and how they approach education and things of that nature. So I think that's what you'll expect. I know it's an open-ended discussion. I wanted to leave it that way because I would like to hear from you, and because I think that we learn from one another. And I also wanted to leave it open-ended. So if you might have any particular questions about dealing with ELLs in your own school setting, I am open to it. But yeah, I do believe that ELLs are students just like every other student who need and are deserving of a good education. And I advocate in the lens of the fact that, they may not speak English yet, because we often say either you speak English or get out of the country. No, we don't use that narrative. We need to change that narrative. I do believe that there's a profound lack of urgency and understanding in the way that we deal with ELLs. And so I thought that that was ultimately what you will get from this chapter without giving too much away.
Absolutely. And I have to say that the chapter, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I'm so happy that it's part of the book. So thank you so much for contributing that.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I've always wanted to author something. So I said, why not start small?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's going to make some big waves. So definitely looking forward to that being released. So last question for you. How can people get in touch with you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at Lizzett Gutierrez 1, which is Lizzett Gutierrez, which is Gutierr1 at Twitter. You could also find me on social media such as Facebook at Lizzett Gutierrez. And you can find me in the Voxer chat or find me in New Jersey by coming to EdCamp New Jersey. Yes, it's on November 14th. So if any of you are looking to travel, definitely come see me at EdCamp New Jersey. We'll be doing awesome things. And hey, you'll catch me on the next, tweet and talk. So I'm reachable, ladies and gentlemen. You could always ask me any questions related to what we discussed tonight.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to actually getting to meet you face to face at EdCamp
Yes,
New Jersey.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So cannot wait. Looking forward to that in November. So definitely wanted to thank you again for being here and sharing your amazing insight. And just wanted to share my screen for a quick second. So for anyone who is watching or who will be listening later, then we have a series of challenges established. So let me screen share. There we go. Screen share. Okay, I'm going to make this big so it stops doing the vortex. All right. So in our badge list, then there are some challenges here that you can use to share your takeaways, share your learning to inspire other educators around the world. So you'll see here at badgelist.com/EduMatch. So you can put your 3 tweets from tonight with the hashtag EduMatch or respond to our Flipgrid here with your takeaways. And last but not least, put a learning reflection about culture and how you see it. And let me see, clicking on this right here. Let me actually bring it back. I think I actually clicked on the wrong one. Oh no. But okay, I'll go. Oh, there it is. Okay, so the spicy one. So creating a blog post or other reflection piece regarding the importance of cultural responsiveness of education. So by linking it there and tweeting it out, then you'll definitely get the spicy badge. So again, the purpose is to extend the learning. These are open badges so other people can see what you are doing. So definitely it's a place to kind of collect ideas and resources to learn and grow from one another. So looking forward to putting this out on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast. So check that out within the upcoming weeks. And next week, we are going to have John Harper, who's going to do a tweet and talk about sharing mistakes. So you can sign up at podcast.edumatch.org/sign up if you want to be a panelist. So yeah, that's about it. So everyone have a wonderful week. Can't wait to see you all next Sunday. Take it easy.
Bye, guys.
Bye.